the Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
Welcome to the Instructor Podcast. This is a show that helps you become an even more awesome driving instructor and run a better driving business. As always, I am your robust host, Terry Cook, and I'm delighted to be here, but even more delighted that you have chosen to listen, because we are back with this fourth episode of Season 8. And I'm delighted to announce that Bright Coaching have opted to continue their sponsorship throughout Season 8. Now, to find out more about what Bright Coaching have to offer, including the new online cohort, head over to brightcoaching.net, or you can find them at the Intelligent Instructor and ADI and JC Expo in Newark on September the 29th. Now, this season's guest, Laura Morris, wanted to pick my brains about road safety and Vision Zero, so this episode sees us take a look at what driving instructors can do with their students and what resources we have to offer. And if you hang about until the end of the show, I'll tell you about a brand new product available and the excellent discount available for ADIs. But just before we dive in, I'd like to point you in the direction of the Instructor Podcast website, where you can get access to the entire back catalogue of episodes, all of our free resources, and find out more about the Instructor Podcast Premium. Head to www.theinstructorpodcast.com. But for now, let's get stuck into the show. So today, again, I am joined by the delightful Laura Morris. How are we today, Laura?
Hey, I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. So we're going to be talking a bit about road safety today, because you wanted to. You wanted to pick my brains on road safety a little bit. Why do you want to pick my brains on road safety?
I feel like we're doing all of this season on lots of topics, and road safety is your project at the moment. It's everything you're doing, and I'm really curious to really understand why. So tell me what Vision Zero is, because I keep hearing it, and I also know that some of the PDIs that I'm training have heard of Vision Zero, but actually, what is it?
So Vision Zero is the idea that by 2050, so what's that, 26 years' time, there will be zero road deaths. No one will die on roads anywhere. Now, we're talking specifically about the UK roads. Obviously, I can't influence America so much, but so specifically in the UK, and part of that is by 2030, which is only 6 years away, road deaths will halve, because there's still about 1,766 people died, I think it was, the last count in a year. So 1,700 people die every year, 5 a day on UK roads. And every one of those is preventable, in theory. So I'm willing to expand on that. But what we're looking for is that by 2030, that number is halved. So, and then by 2050, that is zero, because no one needs to die when they're on the road. No one.
I like that. And I think that's a really important topic to be talking about. And we'll come on to the whole kind of what we can be doing in a bit. But why are you doing this? What made you want to pick it up? What made you want to have this as your project? Was there anything that sparked or influenced that, or?
So way back on season 1, I had James Luckhurst from Project Edward, which is Every Day Without a Road Death, Project Edward. And I remember talking about it then, and it kind of tickled my brain for about 2 years. Like, driving instructors don't seem to be involved in this sector, and also that sector doesn't really seem to involve driving instructors. Nothing's targeted at us. It's all like at the general public or this. Nothing is done for us in the road safety sector. And if you think of driving instructors and you look at the road safety sector, surely we should be 100% embedded with each other. But we're not. We're two very, very distant cousins that don't talk to each other because there's been an argument in the past. And in 2023, I did an episode with James Evans and with Sophie Lydon, so 2 separate episodes. But I did 2 short episodes and put them together to make one, because I didn't think that there'd be enough instructors interested in a road safety episode, so I had to sex it up a little bit by doubling the guests and make it seem more appealing so they don't have to listen to an hour of the same person on road safety. And I started thinking, why am I doing this again? Surely this isn't right. You know, And then fast forward to the end of 2023, and I got Dr. Elizabeth Box on. And I'm like, "Do you know what? I'm going to do a full episode." And it was one of the most fascinating episodes I've ever done, with some amazing feedback, talking all stuff, sort of the psychological, the technical, the academic side of road safety. And I can remember speaking to her about why there's a gap and why it needs bridging. And all this is just going on, and I'm thinking, why is there this gap? So I thought there shouldn't be. I'm gonna bridge that gap. I'm gonna be the bridge in that gap between driving instructors and the road safety sector. So that is what drove me to it, because ultimately, as driving instructors, we work in this one-to-one environment, and it's really easy and correct, I should add, to focus on your student and almost forget the big picture. And we look at the reason why that student wants to pass, and it might be because they want to move from home, it might be because they want to travel, it might be because they want a different job that they need a license for. And it's really easy to focus on that and almost forget the big picture of, we don't want them to die, and we don't want them to kill anyone, and we don't want anyone else to die. And I think that, yeah, that's where it came from, that drive to bring the road safety sector to us and to bring driving instructors to the road safety sector.
It's really interesting. And you mentioned about yourself being that bridge between instructors and the road safety kind of side of things. Have you found that instructors are getting involved? Have you found instructors are interested in this? I mean, I'd hope that everyone is interested in road safety, but have you found people are getting involved with this?
Some, like anything, if you look at the amount of instructors that take part in CPD, it's not a big number.
Mm-hmm.
So the number of people getting involved in road safety is going to be even smaller. But what I am liking is the passion within it. And I'm not saying this is because of me when I say this, just to clarify, but since I've been talking about this road safety stuff, and since maybe for the past 12 months while I've been promoting it more and shouting it more people have done stuff. More individual driving instructors have got involved in local community aspects. They've reached out and raised money for charities like Road Peace and so forth. More instructors have done that, but also on a broader scale, organisations such as the ADI-NJC. The ADI-NJC was the second, I don't know what the term is, second organisation to support the Road Safety Manifesto the PAC's Road Safety Manifesto. If any of these terms don't make sense, please interrupt me, because I'm used to them and I realise a lot of instructors won't be. So the ADI-NJC was the second driving instructor sort of conglomerate to do that. The first was obviously the Instructor Podcast. But no other association has done, to my knowledge. But they supported it, and their name or their logo, it now appears on that. And since then, the ADI-NJC is becoming a member of PACS, which is, acronyms, the Parliamentary Advisory Council for Transport Safety. I think I've got that right. And I'm so excited by that, because I'm not going to be on there. But it's not my place. It's I haven't got the funds, the wherewithal, the whatever to do that. But the ADI-NJC has. So, and I'm not saying that's because of me, but some of this stuff has happened either coincidentally or as a result of, or just people have been nudged. So yes, there are things changing. There are more things being spoken about. I've noticed that things like the expos and the conferences and the conventions, or whatever name they decide to give it for that particular one, we're getting road safety people there. The convention back in April, the Intelligent Instructor one, that was headlined by Mira Naran, who son died in a crash. And she's a road safety, she's so much more than that, but she's a road safety campaigner and also an amazing human. And she headlined that, not the DVSA. The DVSA went on before her. She was also the only person at that convention that got a standing ovation. No one else did. There is a negative. The DVSA went on before Mira Naran. When the DVSA left, so did some of the audience. That's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Prioritising DVSA over Mira Naran. Now, the Intelligent Instructor didn't, and she got a standing ovation. I was so impressed. So yes, are people doing stuff? Yes. Are enough people doing stuff? No. Will it take time? Yes. I've just answered 3 of your questions.
No, I love that. And I think, like you say, everyone could be doing more and more people could be involved. And I think that's why it's important to be talking about it. You mentioned a few organisations, and you said to interrupt you if some of those didn't make sense, but just more for the audience or anyone who's listening, especially potentially PDIs who maybe aren't aware of these sort of organisations. Tell me what organisations are involved with this. You mentioned Road Peace. I think before you've mentioned Break. Like, tell us some of the organisations involved and just briefly what their role is.
So Road Peace and Break have similar kind of roles. Road Peace in particular is involved in post-crash care. So if you, heaven forbid, lose a loved one to, a collision, and we should be calling it a collision, not an accident, and I'm happy to explain why. Road Peace or Break are good places to go. They will provide support, a whole range of support. And if you want to find out what support, it's roadpeace.org, I believe. And I can't remember the Break website. I think it's break.co.uk. Links will be in the show notes. But if you're struggling, you can reach out to them. They also do a lot of campaigning for things like graduated driving licenses. And they've also got amazing resources. So Road Peace and Break in particular. Road Peace have a couple of amazing resources that we can use carefully. That's the caveat I'm going to put on this, carefully. They have collision tracker. So you can go onto their website and find out where the collisions have been in your area. You can see where people have died or where there's just been crashes and those kind of stuff. And they're really interesting and useful stats to have. And you can also see they've got this word I struggle with. For someone that writes a lot and talks a lot, I struggle to say and spell words. An in memoriam page. And that was one of the first things that shook me when I started doing this, because it's all right talking about this. But then you go on that in memoriam page and you see the picture of the 7-year-old that's been killed in a car crash. That hits you different. So there's these resources there. Break has an amazing resource I think it's called the Knowledge Hub. The information in that Break for all things road safety is like phenomenal. It's just page after page after page of stuff that we can go. If you want to find out anything out, the Break's Knowledge Hub is where you go. So they're like two of the road safety charities that I would recommend. And Break have the Road Safety Week that is coming up in November. So this episode's out in September. In November, they have Road Safety Week. A, how many instructors know that? B, how many are going to get involved? And I will just put the caveat here. For years, I wasn't involved. You said about doing more. I can still do more. This isn't me being preachy. This is me talking about there is space to do more.
I love that. And I'm also aware that we've got the honest truth. I'm going to tie that into my next question. So what is, or who are the honest truth? And within that, what can instructors do? And I think because obviously I train PDIs, my fear always is that PDIs sometimes feel like they don't know enough to do anything, or they don't have the experience to do anything. And they kind of shy away from this sort of thing because they're thinking, well, I don't know if I'm allowed to get involved. I don't know if I can do anything. What would your thoughts be on that?
So I'll answer that bit first for the honest truth, because I think that's a really interesting and valid point. And you can do something, you do not have to and shouldn't be doing everything. I'm not saying that anyone listening to this should now go out and start campaigning and you should be spending 30 minutes of every driving lesson preaching to your students about why we should talk about collision and not accident. It's not that. It's about the next step. And that could be incorporating something different in the way you teach. So it could be getting more conversational. It could be getting more coachy. That could just be the next thing, which you'll be doing anyway as you learn to become an instructor. But it's adding a little layer on. Maybe it's adding the thing on my social media page once a week, I'm going to look for a road safety thing to share on my social media. It could be using the honest truth, which I'll explain in a moment as you asked. But it's not about, right, I'm going to do all of this. It's about, what can I add on? It's about, really good example of car parks. I spoke about this recently. I think I spoke about it with you on one of your Go Green things. I'll give you my example of what I started doing as an instructor when I first became an instructor with bay parking. I'll take them to the quietest car park in Leeds. I was in there the other day. 9 instructors were practicing in this car park, right? Because it's pretty much empty. And we're practicing there. And then they go for their test, and on the driving test, they get to go to a nice quiet car park usually, and usually the examiner will say, go over to that side and find somewhere to park, or, something like that. And then they get to park in the middle of 7 empty bays, then off they trot. And then after the test, they go to Morrison's for the first time at like 10 a.m. on a Saturday when it's chocker and go, oh crap, how do I get in between those two cars? Well, maybe the thing we start adding on lessons is we do that. We take them to busier car parks once they're good enough. I'm not like, don't do your first lesson at Meadowhall. Get them to that standard and then up the difficulty to make it harder, so that you're not just getting them for the low standard of a driving test, you get them to the high standard of driving for life. So there's lots of things we can add on, and you don't have to add them all on. You can add one thing on as a PDI, as an ADI, as an experienced instructor or an inexperienced instructor. You can add one thing on, get used to doing that, then add the next. That's how we do anything in life, isn't it? We don't, well, some people like to dive deep in, but we can layer it on gently with the things that work. And if you're a PDI, maybe you start off with the simple stuff. If you're more experienced, maybe you go, do you know what, I'm going to go try multi-stories or motorways or whatever. But does that answer the question around that aspect?
Absolutely. And I think, you're absolutely right. And you don't have to do everything. I like how you described that as, just add something on. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily something in car. If maybe you're a PDI who isn't even teaching yet and you're sort of working towards a pink license, you could still be using social media to be promoting these things, or just, talking about something. So I like how you described that.
Well, just building your knowledge up.
Yeah.
Some of this, I have this idea, this theory that there's going to be a statistic that shocks everyone. Most statistics won't shock everyone, but there'll be one. Mine was 5 people dying a day. It's like, I can't get my head around that. I don't know if I should use this example or not. That's why I've left a pause. But the Grenfell Tower recently, the all the reports now, which is a horrific tragedy, horrific, and people should go to jail for that as a response of what they've found out, 100%, and that should be reported on, and it should be shouted about, and people should be campaigning for people to go to jail. People did not deserve to die in that fire. 72 people died in that fire. 72 people die every 2 weeks on UK roads. Where's the shouting about that?
No one's talking about that.
And I think that sometimes there's a statistic that impacts people. So if you were to go on Brakes Knowledge Hub, if you're a PDI or a potential PDI, and you spent 20 minutes a week doing some of this research and adding a bit of road safety research in, maybe you'll come across that statistic that shakes you, like the 5 a day shook me, or 1 in 5 learners crash within a year of passing their test. Or I always get this one slightly wrong. I think it's 75 people a day are admitted to hospitals due to road crashes. 75 people a day. Whatever, but you get that statistic that shakes you, that then motivates you. That wasn't an intentional rhyme.
No, I agree. And I think, like you said, there's always something that can be done. And I really echo your thoughts on just building your knowledge, because the more knowledge you have, the more equipped you are to take that into lessons and to be able to do something or talk about it in lessons. So I like your thoughts there, especially for, like I say, PDIs who maybe aren't teaching yet. They've got time. I know they might be working another job, but they've got a little bit more time maybe to be looking at these things and researching. And even if you are teaching, or you're an ADI, PDI who's teaching, set time aside. And I think we should all be setting time aside for CPD, which, I think we'll have another whole conversation on CPD, but part of your CPD could be road safety, and make that your CPD goal for the next month or so, and look into it. And
I couldn't agree more, but the thing I will chip in, and I think this is what you're saying, to be fair, but the most important thing for driving instructors is that one-on-one with a student. It's getting good and better at that. So if you're a PDI, that needs to be prioritized. If you're a driving instructor, you have to be the best you can be with that student. That has to be the priority. I'm not saying anyone gives up learning how to teach a student to go and memorize some numbers, but it's layering stuff on top. Don't make the mistake I made, which is putting that much focus into podcasting that I took my eye off the ball too much with my driving instructor stuff. And I had to go and play catch up a little bit because I'd slipped down or at least just stagnated. I think what we need to do is prioritize the stuff we're doing with students, but we can add extra in. And whether that's 20 minutes a week, or whether it's an hour a week, or whether it's one day a month, or whatever, I think that variety of training and development, including the road safety aspects into it, and not just memorizing numbers, but looking at how we can be a better instructor. And some of that is the in-car stuff we do with students. And the better we do our job, the less people will crash course post-test. And it's really easy to be demoralized, and it's really easy to go, we're not going to make a difference. We're not overnight. This is going to take, the goal is 2050. I don't think we'll achieve it in 2050 because I don't think the attitude's right. But why not have that as a goal? Why not set that as a target? And I'm going on my tangent now, but yeah, I think that all we can control is ourselves, so we can do more. And we're just taking a brief pause to give a shout out to some of our latest premium members, and they are Lee Jowett, Kat Tompkinson, and Michael Colley. These folks have decided to upgrade their CPD and get immediate access to some of the best training and development resources available to ADIs and PDIs, including training things on like coaching, mindfulness, mental health, and the standards check. They also get access to some of the best minds in the industry like Bob Morton, Emma Cottington, Ray Seagrave, and Tom Stenson. Plus, they even get some more from me, but don't let that put you off. To find out more, or to sign up for a 3 weeks trial, head to theinstructorpodcast.com or use the link in the show notes. And I also want to take a moment to point you in the direction of Bright Coaching, who recently announced a new online version of their accredited qualification in coaching, behavioural change, and driver psychology. The first online cohort kicks off on October the 31st, making this year's Halloween extra special. To find out more or to sign up to the newsletter, head to brightcoaching.net. But for now, let's get stuck back into the show.
Can tell you're passionate about it, and I do really like that. Just talk to us about the honest truth then. Who are the honest truth, and what can they do, or what can we do with the honest truth?
So the honest truth was founded by Ollie Taylor, who was in the road traffic police, was police for like 2 decades, I think, and road traffic police for 10 years. And it's very core. It's a series of videos we can watch with our students. We get it on this phone, we get an app, and there's 10 videos on there. I think it's being increased to 13 soon. So there's 10 videos on there, and they're kind of TikTok style videos, like jump cut, like all, hello and welcome to the, that kind of video. But they're about 2 minutes long. And they're covering topics like seatbelts and drink driving, drug driving, insurance, that kind of stuff. With the idea being that, their idea is that you watch one video at the start of your lesson with your student. That's it. I do it slightly differently, but that's their suggestion. Watch one video with your student at the start of the lesson, and then that can lead to a discussion. And sometimes the student wants to discuss it. Sometimes the student will say, actually, I kind of get all that. Sometimes we can ask questions on it. And they then follow up with some more information in the video that gets emailed to the student. The idea being that we're making them think. So we can't teach people not to drink and drive. We can't include that in our lesson because we can't get them drunk, let them have a lesson to see the consequences. But what we can do is talk about it. And one of the ways we can talk about it is using the honest truth. So I think this is just a fantastic resource for every single driving instructor. But in particular, I think it's a good resource for people that find it difficult to start those conversations. Because if you don't know how to start it, you've got this honest truth video that you can show them that can lead to a conversation. So it's available to every instructor. It is £7.50 a month, which isn't cheap. We're in a cost of living crisis. I appreciate that. But I would advise every single driver instructor to get this. Now, what I would also say, there are some organisations, if you're a part of, you can get it for £5 a month. And certain areas, you can actually get it for free. So if you go onto the Honest Truth website, I should know that. I think it's honesttruth.co.uk. Could be wrong. Link in the show notes. But if you go on the website, you'll be able to see if you're in one of the areas where you can get it for free. What I would also say is don't wait for it to become free. Just get it and pay for it, because it is such an, I started off this by talking about the road safety sector not reaching out to instructors. The honest truth is in the road safety sector doing something specifically for driving instructors. And I will shout out Ollie Taylor and I will use the example I've given before because it's just such an awesome example. He defends driving instructors to the hilt. He's our staunchest advocate in the road safety sector. I was at the Young Driver Focus when someone was, at the end of his presentation, essentially just slagging off driving instructors, and he shut that shit down straight away. And his line was something like, there's some over there who'll disagree with you. I work with driving instructors. The bulk of them are awesome folk. There's bad everywhere, but the bulk is awesome. And that's what we need. So even if you just get it to support Ollie Taylor who's on our side, that it's one of the best resources in our industry.
I think it's good to have those sort of resources, and people should be aware of that and make use of them because they're there to be used. Tell me what your goal is, as in your own sort of personal goal with your road safety project at the moment. Where are you going with it? Is it something you're going to carry on long term, or what's your thoughts?
There can only be one goal, which is the zero road death. I don't want people to die. Now, that's not down to me. That's down to us, everyone. And we can do more as driving instructors. And in terms of what I do and where I'm going and where I'm taking it, I currently host the podcast Driving Instructors to Vision Zero, the least popular podcast I do, which, fair enough, if people don't want the road safety resources and information that are relevant to us, that's completely fine.
Why do you think it is the least popular one?
Not sexy, is it? It's simple as that. If I did a podcast tomorrow and called it the Standards Check Podcast, that will immediately get more listeners than Driving Instructors to Vision Zero. And I should put the caveat on here. None of this is judgmental, what I'm saying. This is just factual. It's displayed. Now, I will also have my hands up and admit that this isn't the best promoted podcast I've done. So there is an element of that there. But it's not appealing. It's not nice. It's not nice for instructors to look at that bigger picture. I don't like looking at that bigger picture. I don't like thinking that I'm not the perfect instructor. And because of that, I will contribute in a negative fashion to what happens post-test. There are people who have passed with me where they're not let me rephrase that. No one's going to be the perfect driver. But there are people that have passed with me where I've looked back on, I could have done more. And there will be people in the future that look back on and go, I could have done more. But all I can do is use that experience to do better next time. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this. I'm trying to give driving instructors access to information and resources that is relevant to us within the road safety sector. And I think that, I just want to bring the two closer together. And long term, I want our industry and the road safety sector closer together. And I do think things like the NJC coming on board with PACs, acronyms, is a real big step in the right direction, because driving instructors, at least the members of the ADNJC, are now going to be represented in the Parliament Advisory Council for Transport and Safety. We never have been. We are now going to be represented there. The Road Safety Manifesto for 2024, which I cannot remember all the things on there. I'll be honest with you, there's 4 things, and I get up to date with all the modern technology. Create a road safety strategy, which isn't in the UK, which is shocking when 5 people die every day. Graduated driving licenses, and another one that I've forgotten. But there's nothing on there at all in that manifesto to do with driving instructors. Nothing. And we're putting people on the road. ADI&JC are now getting involved with PACs. That's probably going to change, hopefully. They will hopefully be championing that. So things are coming together, but I want to get that relationship closer, and I want to build on it, and I want to get that towards Vision Zero. I've got other things, other ideas, other stuff planned that I want to do that I'm not going to talk about, because A, no idea if it'll happen, B, no idea when it'll happen, C, you wanted a shorter episode for this one. But do you know what, Rick? I know this isn't how you meant it when I say this, but we're doing a shorter episode for road safety. It's always that. It's always around that I go back to when I did the first episode on it, the first episode on season 1. It was a little bonus episode tagged on end. The second episode I did, I put 2 people on to sex it up, because I shouldn't use that phrase, because it wasn't appealing enough. And it was only then when I went, no, screw it. There are instructors that are interested in this. There are instructors that want to learn that more. I'm going to cater for those instructors as well. So in terms of goals, I want to get the industry to two sectors closer together. I want the instructors to have more of an impact on that road safety sector. I want the road safety sector to think about us more, and I understand why they don't and can't. And I want that vision zero. There is no reason at all why people should be dying on the road. There isn't, and things need to be in place to change that.
I completely agree. And I think driving instructors are in a really good position to be influencing the next generation of drivers. And we've got access to all of the new drivers, or most of the new drivers that we're putting on the road. And I absolutely agree. There's definitely more that driving instructors could and should be doing.
I think the last thing I'll chip in with this is, and I think this applies to everything, not just the road safety stuff, but it's to catch yourself when you're making an excuse. Because I make excuses for all sorts of stuff. I can't do that today because I can't do that today because. I said it just then, I'm not going to tell you my plans because it'll go, it's catch yourself when you're making an excuse. So if you're saying, well, I'm not going to teach multi-story car parks to my student because most of the students won't want them and they'll do what they want after test anyway, why will I make a difference? Well, you might make a difference to one person. And if the thing you change helps one person, that one person may not crash their car. Now, that could be a life-changing thing, as in it could have been a serious life-changing event, the crash, or it could be an innocuous one, but you may have just helped that person. So not everyone is going to want to watch the Honest Truth videos. I think out of all my students so far, so out of all my students, there's been one that hasn't wanted to watch the videos. And the last example I'll give on this, and I get these numbers wrong slightly sometimes, so you'll have to bear with me with this, because these are my own stats, personal stats. I've always offered motorway lessons. Well, since I've been available during lessons and stuff, but I've always offered motorway lessons. I used to have about a 10% take up. Now I don't just offer them, I encourage them, and I talk about it from lesson 1, and I talk about, I can't wait till we get to this point because we can do motorways. Now my take up's about 80%, all because of the way I reframed it. And it's that, so catch yourself when you're making the excuse. And if the excuse is genuine, then fair enough. Go, okay, I'm going to live with that excuse today. But if the excuse is just a cop-out, then that's where you need to step up and go, no, I'm going to change or offer or tweak or whatever.
I like that. And it's been lovely hearing you talk about it, because you are clearly really passionate about this, and someone's got to bridge that gap, like you say. And I'm pleased that it's someone like yourself, because you are in a position where you can be shouting about this and hopefully influence instructors to do more. And I do hope that instructors do start doing more. And Road Safety Week in November, we should definitely be promoting that more and getting more involvement.
I will talk to you off recording about that. But there is one last thing I'm going to say, actually, and I'm going to use graduating driving licenses as an example. I don't think graduated driving licenses will ever come into play. And I'm not going to go in all the details now. You can listen to other episodes for that. But I don't think they'll ever come into play. However, imagine if 40,000 driving instructors were talking about graduated driving licenses on social media. There are going to be a lot of parents that wouldn't have considered some of the dangers that now change their mind. Now, that's not going to be 100,000 people next year suddenly go, oh, right, I'm going to have 60 hours rather than 40, and I want to practice motorways and slip roads and multi-story car parks. But it'll be some. And then it'll be more the next year, and then more the next year, and more the next year. And I think that's the key. We have to accept that this isn't an overnight win. But if we talk about it more, if we make it more visible, and yeah, it won't be 40,000 driving instructors to begin with. It'll be 10. But then it might be 15, then it might be 20, and then it might be more in your local area. Maybe you can get your local area on board. And all of a sudden, your local area becomes the area that is the road safety hotspot in the UK. And then I want to go move to that area. And I think that it's easy to underestimate the impact we can have, because we change one thing and we don't see the change overnight. I'm going to get environmental and political. I'll leave it there. But yeah.
It takes time, doesn't it? It's like you say, it's not something that's going to change overnight. It does take time, and people have to kind of stick with it. And like I say, sometimes you don't always see the impact that your changes might have like you say, if a pupil passes their test and you've had some really good sort of road safety discussions with them and everything, you might well save their life in future, but you might not see that.
You'll never see it, or you'll very, very rarely see it when you prevented a collision, because they'll be driving properly and they won't notice.
You're only going to hear about it when they do crash, if you haven't, had that conversation, or maybe if we haven't done enough. So I hear you on that one.
It's one of the things that I hate saying this. I say to my students, who made that situation safe? When someone cuts in or someone does something and they're shocked, but who made that situation safe? And they'll think for a second, they'll go, oh, I did. I'm like, there you go. It's going to be safe after your test. I'm like, oh yeah. Because they're now making those situations safe. And it can be annoying when that person cuts in because they shouldn't have done, but they've made that situation safe.
That's a really lovely question. Who made that situation safe? I like that one.
Only say it when they've made it safe. don't say it when they haven't.
But then, even if they haven't made the situation safe, it's still a good learning opportunity to talk about maybe what we didn't do enough of, maybe what we could have changed, what the other person did to make us safe, to keep us safe. And then it could be a conversation that, when you're driving after you've passed your test, other drivers might do what you've just done. It wasn't the greatest thing to do, but it happened. And how are you going to respond to that if you saw someone else doing what you've just done, for example? So actually making anything a learning opportunity is a bonus.
And that conversation is the exact conversation we should be having with our students. And that is what creates those safe thinking drivers. I've said this before. We've probably all heard the phrase, say driving for life. What is it? I don't just teach you to pass a test, I teach you say driving for life. And I've said this before, but my instructor said that to me 20 years ago, and he did not teach me say driving for life. I was not prepared to drive by myself. I was good enough to pass a test. I wasn't good enough to drive. We want to get our students good enough to drive, but yes, they're the sort of conversation we need to be having. Anything else you want to touch on road safety-wise today, Laura?
I don't think so. I think we could go on for hours, but I think I was just interested to hear your thoughts and why you're doing this and what makes you passionate. And like I say, you clearly are passionate, and I'm really interested and curious to see where this goes for you and for the industry. And I'll be listening and acting as well with interest and bringing this into my own lessons. I still teach 1 or 2 learners per week, but also bringing this into my training with my PDIs to get them to be also talking about road safety. So I think, instructors, trainers, ADIs, PDIs, everyone has a part to play. So it's been really interesting hearing you talk about all of this, and I'm following with interest.
Yep. And if you're listening and you like it, go and check out Driving the Instructors Division Zero podcast. Link in the show notes. The latest episode was with Dr. Ian Greenwood, talking about the politics of road death. And it was another person that got involved largely because their child died during a crash. And he actually speaks about that during the episode. That's another one that is pulls on the old strings a little bit. But we've also delighted to announce that Ollie Taylor is joining us every month to share his final thoughts on each one. And that episode goes out the first of every month. So do you want to take a moment to remind people where they can find you?
They can find us at Go Green, drivinginstructortraining.co.uk. Or if you're a PDI and you would just like some sort of informal advice, support, etc., any PDI, regardless of who you're training with, can join us at Lose PDI Group on Facebook.
And as always, Ben, thank you for joining me on this episode, on this moth-free episode of the Instructor
There's
Podcast.
no moths today. You've kept the moths out.
Podcasts are always better when there's no moths. So again, big thank you to Laura Morris for joining me on today's episode. And I love having my brain picked about road safety. I think Laura mentioned it a couple of times on the recording there that I sound really passionate about it, and I am. It's something that I believe we all can do more with, and I try not to get preachy with it, but I think if I'm being honest, this is the one that I sometimes do get a little bit preachy with, but that's never intentional. I think it's more my excitement, but I really do believe we all can do more, and I think that what I said during the recording was correct. We don't have to do everything, but we can do something. Let's start by identifying one area that we can improve and start there. And speaking of one area, I did say that I was going to talk to you a little bit about a new product or service that are available, and that is the Copilot community. Now, this is brought about by James Evans, who has created Copilot along with other people as well. And I've had a little look at this, and I think it's really impressive. There's like resources and there's trainings, and you can interact with people. It's like Facebook for road safety. Now, I'm sure James won't want me to call it that, but he probably won't listen, so I'll get away with it. But that's what it looks like to me. It's like Facebook with training for road safety. And there's some amazing people in there. There's a great way to network. And as I said, there's already some great training resources. Now, when I spoke to James about this, we kind of identified it was quite expensive, which it is. We can't hide from that, especially for independent driving instructors such as myself. So I nagged him a little bit, and he's agreed to create a 40% discount for ADIs. So if you go to the show notes for this episode, you will find a link to a walkthrough video. James has recorded a 10-minute video for us, walking through to show us what's on there. It's actually a really good video. Explains it better than I can here, so I would advise you go check that out. But there's also a link in there, so when you sign up, you can get that 40% discount. I'm going to be signing up later on this month. I've got all this stuff to do first, but I'm going to be signing up later on this month. And I'm genuinely excited to see where this goes. And I know James has kind of, I'm going to say hinted, but I think it's more than that, at the fact that if we get enough instructors in there, they will be creating instructor-specific content as well. So definitely go and check that out. Again, links in the show notes for all that stuff. But also want to take an opportunity to shout out someone else that does a lot for road safety, which is Stuart Lockery of Bright Coaching. What he's doing at Bright Coaching is bringing road safety into our industry because it's going above the standards set by the DVSA. He's talking about not just adhering to a formal standards check and that being the be-all and end-all, but how can we go above that? How can we be better driving instructors? How can we make the roads safer? Because I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and look, 5 people die every day on UK roads. 75 people hospitalised as a result of crashing on UK roads. 1 in 5 new drivers crash every year. Who's teaching them? We are. We're teaching them. So we can do better. I'm not blaming us, just to clarify. I'm not blaming us, but we can look at how we can do better. So Bright Coaching is getting involved in that, even if they're not calling it road safety, which, they might be, but even if they're not calling it that, they are making us better instructors, which is going to make the road safer. So head over to brightcoaching.net to find out everything they have to offer, or you can find them at the trade stand at the Expo on September the 29th. And I also want to take a moment to send you in the direction of the Instructor Podcast Premium. So when I first created the Instructor Podcast, I wasn't really thinking about a membership. I wasn't really thinking about paid content because I was just enjoying doing the podcast. But the feedback I got around the time back in 2021 was that people wanted more. And unfortunately, to do more, I have to give up more time. So that's where this idea of membership came from. And also the idea of creating a membership encourages ongoing training. I provide this regular content into this membership. Now, some of it is by me. So I now do this pretty much weekly show that I call Unplugged, where I talk around aspects of our industry and try and give people ideas and information that they can go off and implement. But I also get some of the best minds within our industry as well to come and provide this CPD, and it's an ongoing thing. And we cover all sorts in there, again, not just looking at the standards set by the DVSA, but seeing how can we be better. So people that sign up to the Instructor Podcast membership, it's just getting this continuous, ongoing CPD, or training and development, as preferred to call it now. So I really would encourage you to take a look. It might not be for you. And one thing I would say is that if you are not willing to put the work in, I won't bother signing up, because I am giving you the things, but you still need to implement them. So if you're not willing to put the work in, if you're not willing to try and become a better ADI, don't sign up to the Instructor Podcast Premium. However, if you want to get better and you are willing to put a bit of time in, head over to www.theinstructorpodcast.com, or you can find a link in the show notes and make the most of our week's free trial. I don't know how much longer that will be on there, but it's on there for now. So go and sign up to that and make the most of it for a week, and you can then leave, or as I think it's about 95% of people do, you can stay. But for now, let's just keep raising standards.
The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
If you're really serious about creating safer drivers and making the roads a safer place, I would really encourage you to check out the Driving Instructors to Vision Zero podcast. Links in the show notes. Have a great day.